Hello, this is Bram Memon, District 86 Club Growth Director, and today we have George Marshall, the famous distinguished Toastmaster George Marshall, 57, San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California, 5 DTMs. Wow, 5 DTMs is a lot of DTMs. I am only on my second in 25 years. George, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to help out.
Now, we want to talk today about active and inactive, whether they're active or inactive on our agendas and so on, and what it means. So first question, George, what is the guidance by Toastmasters International or protocol on inactive and active members?
Thank you, Bram. Toastmasters defines in the club constitution the status of inactive member. And what they mention is you may have members that are expecting an extended absence. You may have members that simply want to maintain their membership, but are not going to be able to attend regularly. And the Constitution allows for the inactive status. They have to maintain their dues, but they don't count. In particular, they don't count towards quorum. So they're expected to simply be not participating, although clubs have considerable flexibility on this. This is the nice thing about inactive member, is that clubs are pretty much can administer it however they want to.
Well, and that is a point that I won't really get to, is that clubs do have flexibility already. It's not written hard. It's not written in stone by Toastmasters International as to exactly what it means. So what do clubs normally do, or what is their leeway here?
If a club does not have any inactive member provision, then in order to do fully correct and legal votes, such as officers and so forth, they would have to have a quorum, a majority of the active members. That can be challenging, as we discussed. If a club, for some reason, some members aren't attending often right now, or as you get toward the dues period, people that have left are still on the roster, it makes it difficult to get quorum. So a club can come up with an inactive member policy, and there are different ways of doing it, and we can talk about those.
Awesome. The first distinction is, of course, that I'm getting is that if members have not paid during a renewal period, they're not inactive. They're not members in good standing. They're actually not members anymore, right? So that's not what we are talking about. Inactive doesn't mean you haven't paid or not paid. It's not about the payment. It's about your presence in the club as you go along. Is that right, George?
Right. That is correct. Yeah. Everything about inactive member refers to someone whose dues are paid, but for whatever reason is not fully participating in club activities at the moment.
And I like that. At the moment is the key word, because some people have been asking me, so does that mean that you take privileges away from a member when they're inactive? So George, what do you think?
That's not the intention. If you read the provision in the club constitution, it provides considerable flexibility. It allows for clubs to design their own policy. My home club, for example, adopted a inactive member policy quite a while back that essentially has pretty much no impact on the member or their activity other than what they themselves choose to do.
Great. And you know what, in my 25 years, and I've learned this from my peers who've been much longer in Toastmasters, that it helps with the quorum numbers, and if there's anything that needs to be voted on, it helps with that. But you're not really taking away any privileges from the member. If the member turns up at the club after they've been inactive, say even for 1-2 months, as soon as they come into the club, they have the privileges as a normal member. Would you agree?
Yes. Again, Toastmasters gives the club flexibility to say whether they are immediately a member active again, or whether they have to have it restored. So the provisions I've seen that work the best for the member is that the member is automatically declared inactive after missing a certain number of meetings, or on their own request if they happen to know they'll be out. Correct. And that they then become active again by the simple act of showing up at a meeting. The very moment they are at a meeting, whether in person or on Zoom, they have become active again. So really not much impact. If you're really thinking it through carefully, you would have provisions so that if someone's an officer, that you don't interfere with their officer duties, and you would allow them to request a speech ahead of time when they know they'll be back. But those are small incremental changes. The basic idea is they come and go, and their activity status is managed for them.
Exactly. That is my understanding too, George. So, when there's, for example, some sort of a vote has been called by the club, and and the member has been inactive for a while, so he just comes in for the business meeting because of the voting. Can he vote, this inactive member?
Certainly, if the club has adopted the provision that says a member is active the very moment they appear at any club meeting, then yes, of course, they are active. Some clubs have chosen to have a slightly different policy, but the one we're just discussing is the one that has the least impact on the member and really doesn't affect the club either.
Exactly. Now, also, when we put a member as inactive because they haven't been around, they haven't even requested, they just stopped coming and there's no contact with them. So we put them on an inactive list. I think that triggers the VP of membership to make sure that they are following up on a regular basis when the member is sitting on an inactive list, right?
Yes, that's a good idea. Particularly, well, when a member simply quits showing up, let's agree that the VP membership or some officer should be following up with them anyway. But even in this particular case, if they've requested it's best to keep track of the members so you know their status.
I think it's a great retention strategy as well, to put a member as inactive if they haven't been around for a while and they haven't communicated to you why they are not around. It's a good retention strategy because it then triggers either the VP of membership or membership committee members or the mentor or some people that have a connection with a member who is not coming, to go and contact them and say, hey, why aren't you coming, right? I think it's a great retention strategy.
Yes, clubs should always be striving to figure out why people left. Often people are absent for their own reasons, their own life, things they have to cope with, but occasionally the VP membership may discover there was something that was bothering the member about the club, and that's an opportunity for a discussion and a chance to make a change.
The other thing I find is that sometimes, a member just gets lazy or demotivated and say, oh, I'm not going to today's meeting. And when they say that, then the next week comes and they say, I didn't go next week, I may as well just miss this week. And then suddenly it's 2 weeks. And then it just slides down from there. And if there's no connection from the club, we've lost them.
It can happen.
And it does. Over my 25 years, I found that, and I have done it too, not at Toastmasters. In Toastmasters, I've been very consistent, but in like going to the gym, for example, I say, oh, well, I'll miss today. I'm just feeling a little lazy. And the next day arrives and say, oh, well, I didn't go yesterday, maybe. And the next thing, 3 weeks have passed and you haven't been to the gym. And it's human nature, right, George?
Indeed it is. Indeed it is.
So I think it is very good for either the VP of membership or the membership committee or somebody in the club to connect with somebody who has not been around and who hasn't even communicated why they are not around, and keep tabs on that person on a regular basis. Hey, how are you? What's going on? So in your club, George, what do you guys do with a member who's just slipped down in the cracks and hasn't appeared and hasn't communicated? What do you guys do?
I wish I could say that someone always immediately follows up, but it depends on the officers that you have and how energetic they are. But yes, the whole idea is that the club, often as the VP membership, does some kind of follow-up. What's happening? Why haven't you been coming? Is there some reason? And usually it turns out to be something about their job or their schedule change or something like that. Right. But at least that way the member knows that the club is thinking about them and cares about them and may help motivate them to try just a little bit harder to come back.
Okay, this is a little bit off topic. This is a question that I've always wondered if it happens in other districts. I've been a member of about 9 different clubs in my 25 years because I moved around, and so I've chosen the nearest club where I'm from. And I found that sometimes a the guest will come 2 or 3 times. They're so turned on. They'll pay their membership fee. And as soon as they pay the membership fee, they'll say, oh, next week, sorry, I can't come next week because I got something to do. And before you know it, they don't come at all. And then they've disappeared totally. And they paid the money, but they have never come to the meeting after that. Has that ever happened to you? I've seen that quite a number of times.
I can think of 2 cases, and it was a shock to the club where, much as you said, a guest came several times. They even checked out other clubs in the area, and they finally came back and they signed up with us, and we never saw them again. We never saw them again. One of the realities that we have to deal with in Toastmasters is no one's number one priority. We have our health, we have our family, we have our jobs. We prioritize Toastmasters to accomplish the goals that we want to, but things do change. I've had members that were enthusiastic and then dropped out for a year because of a work or schedule or life change. It just happens, but we need to keep letting them know that we care and that we would love to have them come back.
Definitely. Well, thank you, George. Thank you for shedding some more light on active and inactive members, because I really wanted to know whether I was doing something wrong or right. And having asked around, especially on Toastmasters International group on Facebook, there were so many different types of answers. A number of them were a bit defensive as to, no, you can't put anybody on inactive list because they thought you were taking privileges away from them. And from this conversation, I know, and I've always known, you don't take any privileges away from anybody at all when they are inactive. It's just helping us with what would be a quorum for an emergency meeting or for voting in of officers and so on.
That's a final thought. I would just recommend that if a club does adopt an inactive member provision, and I hope they do, that they just consider for a moment the implications on the member, just to be sure they have not inadvertently made it inconvenient for the member. But that's not hard to do. It's easy to do. And it's just a matter of being sure you've thought through your policy.
So just to be clear, when you say policy, you're making a provision, it should be in a bylaw on the Constitution, right?
That's the idea.
That's the idea. That will make it very crystal clear then, and it would be very apparent and open and transparent as to exactly what the clubs are doing.
It should
Unfortunately,
be written down.
I know that the clubs I have been in, it's just been an ad hoc thing, a general cultural thing, rather than actually written in a bylaw. So, and it has helped. Nobody's really questioned that much in my years, except 1 or 2 clubs. So. Well, thank you very much, George, for your assistance. And I know it's morning time. It's like 2 o'clock over here. It's 11 o'clock your time on a Friday. So thank you very much for being here, George.
Quite welcome. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.